The final class to cover in my one build for all game modes series is the Mesmer. If you haven't been keeping up, I theorycraft a build to provide the best results in all game modes while adhering to one gear set and one playstyle, while only changing the traits and utilities, allowing you the most access to Guild Wars 2's content as soon as possible. And because to me, much of the content of Guild Wars 2 is experiencing all of the diverse classes, having the ability to play every class in every situation is very valuable. That being said, you can check the playlist in the description for the other classes, but for this video, I will cover the Mesmer. Choosing one build was very difficult for Mesmer. I could have chosen a power chronomancer, but that's susceptible to focus in many PvP game types. I could choose a conditioned staff mirage, which, while effective for one-on-one combat in PvP and PvE, it's very bad in AoE situations and can't secure kills as easily on players who choose not to fight you, which can be frustrating and not very fun. So instead, I decided that a power Greatsword Mirage is the best build. It can do great single target damage and AoE damage with the Greatsword's split surge, ambush ability, and has very good mobility for just exploring the open world. Whereas the staff build feels slow and clunky, a power Mirage can be a lot of fun with its bursty playstyle that can also do amazing CC, as well as secure kills with the sword and pistol. Also, the amount of clone generation this build has is insane, which in combination with some synergies in the traits will give great survivability. Before we get into the build specifics though, let's go over the basic Mirage mechanics. As a Mirage, you no longer perform a dodge roll. You will just evade with no animation. This means you can dodge while doing any other skill. Not only does this give you more options because you won't get stuck in any weapon animations that prevent you from being able to dodge, but it allows you to stack your damage rotation on top of your evades so you can deal damage and avoid damage at the same time. Your dodge is no longer a dodge, but it is an evade frame called Mirage Cloak, which is basically the same thing, but for purposes of Mirage mechanics, it's different. When you dodge or gain Mirage Cloak, you will give yourself the ability to use an ambush skill for the next few seconds. The ambush skill will replace your one skill during that time. The ambush skill depends on which weapon you're wielding. For this build, I use Greatsword and Sword. So the Greatsword ambush is Split Surge, which is a beam just like your normal one skill, but it will give you might for each hit and vulnerability on each hit, and it will shoot out multiple beams if there are multiple targets nearby. Because the beams pierce, you can hit one target with more than one beam, multiplying your damage significantly because you'll be giving much more vulnerability to them, much more might to yourself, and giving them multiple hits of the attack. On Sword, the ambush skill is Mirage Thrust, which is a leap skill that will daze the target and will create a clone if you have a target. This is just great for mobility because every time you get Mirage Cloak, you can reposition. You can choose to go where you want, or you can choose a target and really lock them down with how much daze and clone generation you get from this ambush. The equipment I use is Berserker armor and weapons with fireworks runes. Mesmers don't have much access to swiftness, so it gives a nice movement speed buff, as well as power, fury, might, and vigor, which are all super useful boons to this build. Your trinkets can either be full Berserker as well, or full Marauder, or really anything in between. I personally like to have a bit of Marauder for World vs. World, but in PvE, you'll have plenty of survivability. Because trinkets are so easy to swap out because there are no runes or sigils to deal with, you can get a set of Berserker and a set of Marauder trinkets and mix whatever you wish. Take energy sigils on both sets because dodges are the bread and butter of this build, and having more dodges means more of everything. Also take the Orrian Truffle and Meat Stew for even more dodges and might. Then on Greatsword I take a Force Sigil because this is where most of my damage comes from, and on Sword I take an Absorption Sigil which steals boons on Interrupt. Because on Sword I'm spamming out so many dazes from ambushes, it's going to eventually interrupt and on a 3-second internal cooldown allow me to handle a lot of the more difficult mobs that spam boons like the Mordant Crescent or the Dredge. Alternatively, you could take the Sigil of Severance, which could give ferocity and precision on interrupt, which can increase your damage quite a bit. Both of these sigils can be earned from the World vs. World trader at spawn. I like Absorption a bit better for World vs. World, but you can decide. The PvE version of the build makes use of the massive clone generation along with healing on clone creation effects to get lots of sustain. I take Dueling, Inspiration, and Mirage. Take the Pistol and Sword traits for lowered cooldowns and more damage. You can take Superiority Complex if you don't like the Shatter as much, but if you take Deceptive Evasion, which gives a clone every time you dodge, you can get your clone generation so high that you almost always have maximum clone shatters when you want. You'll also gain Fury and Vigor passively, which are great boons since you want more dodges and more crits on this power build. Inspiration gives a lot of sustain and condition cleansing because whenever you shatter, and on this build you can shatter quite a bit, you will cleanse a condition and heal. Choose between more condition cleanse on Phantasm Cast, which is to be honest not needed, and the Res Feedback trait, which is super good but has no purpose when you're alone. Take Illusionary Inspiration, which gives healing to you and nearby allies whenever you summon an illusion, combined with the passive effect of your Signet Heal, which has the same effect but only for you. You can heal for about 600 to 700 each time you summon an illusion. What exactly is an illusion? There are two types of illusions, clones and phantasms. So whenever you summon a phantasm, it turns into a clone afterward. So that's two instances of an illusion being summoned. Also, every time you dodge, you summon a clone. Also, every 10 seconds, your Signet of Illusions will passively pop out a clone. Also, your Sword Ambush churns out clones. So there's a lot of healing available to you just by playing the build aggressively. In Mirage, I take Renewing Oasis for pretty much permanent regeneration uptime to add to the sustain because I don't really need more clone generation, but if you really wanted to get more burst on your build, you can go Self-Deception and use Jaunt and Illusionary Ambush to get more clones. I take Desert Distortion, which is absolutely mandatory because it makes Distortion give you access to ambush skills, and whenever you use your Distortion, you will create Mirage Mirrors at each clone that is shattered. You can pick up these mirrors which will do damage to nearby enemies and weaken them, while also granting you Mirage Cloak. So one Distortion cast can give you 4 ambushes if you shatter with max clones. Finally, take Infinite Horizon, which gives all of your clones Mirage Cloak whenever you gain it. This helps your clones to survive AoE, but also allows them to perform ambush abilities with lesser damaging effects than your weapon ambushes. If you spawn the clone while in Sword Pistol, it will perform Mirage Thrust, which can give you more dazes to lock your target down and triggers the interrupt effect on your pistol recharge trait. On Greatsword, your clone will also use Split Surge, which can shoot beams everywhere, giving even more vulnerability and can do a little bit more supplemental damage. I take Jaunt and Blink for the extra mobility and stun breaks, and then I take the Signet of Illusions because you want to be shattering a lot on this build, and if you can get a double Distortion, that means so much more of those clones can be turned into Mirage Cloaks from the Mirage Mirrors, so it's just way more ambush synergy to have 2 Distortions. The last utility slot can be the Illusionary Ambush, or really any other kind of utility that you need, such as Feedback or even Portal. But I like to take Illusionary Ambush because it's another dodge on demand. What it will do is it will randomly place you and your clones around your next target, which is really nice because whenever you kill a target, all of your clones will be desummoned. So you've either got to shatter them before the target dies or you lose them, or you can gain momentum on your next target by moving your clones over to the next target with Illusionary Ambush. Because the build is shattering a lot, but also wants to get value from Infinite Horizon on as many clones as possible, you'll often do a rotation of clone generation, use dodges and ambushes until you're out of them, shatter, then repeat with clone generation. Because most of your clone generation comes from dodging, it can be very non-linear, but essentially you want to shatter more often when you're in Sword because you have much more access to clone generation, and try to shatter a bit less and use more ambushes, while in Greatsword because you get much more value from the infinite horizon on the split surge. Essentially, your rotation works like this. Start out in Sword Pistol and use all your clone generation from the 4 and 3, then burst with Blurred Frenzy to get your ferocity stacks up, or dodge to ambush. From here you will have max clones and can shatter Diversion for more dazes and potentially more pistol abilities recharged, or use Mind Rack for damage. After you shatter, do one more dodge into your sword ambush to get 2 clones, swap to Greatsword to get your extra dodge from the energy sigil and use Greatsword 2, wait till it lands to get your vulnerability and might and 3rd clone, then dodge with all 3 clones ready to get massive split surge damage. Spam your dodges liberally, but wait until your split surge finishes so you don't waste them. Use your Greatsword 4 and 3 to fill in the gaps of your ambushes, and Greatsword 5 to organize enemies closer to each other so that you can pierce them all with your split surge. Once you're out of dodges, you can shatter Mind Rack with all that vulnerability and might from split surge. You can swap back into sword if you need to create more clones, reposition, or handle a lot of pressure, or you can just camp Greatsword if it's a massive AoE situation. The rotation can be very simple, but when dealing with mechanics, it can be very complex to be able to time your dodges and still get value out of the ambushes. Putting Distortion in there even can give you big ambush combos, but you need to time it well since it is a shatter, and shattering removes your clones, so all the ambushes you can do will not get as much infinite horizon value if you just shattered. So usually when I use Distortion is when I'm using a Phantasm. I will have however many clones up when I distort, precast a Phantasm so that it will summon the clone after my Distortion, maybe pop another clone generation skill, use the ambush from my Distortion, and then afterwards use 1 dodge to get my final clone to ambush, and then I'm back in business and I can use all of the Mirage Mirrors to give myself and my clones ambushes. If you're in Sword during your Distortion, you'll be creating more clones than you need, so you can run through your shatters quickly. If you're in Greatsword when you use Distortion, you want to first get your clones back to 3, then start using up your Mirage Mirrors. This may sound really hard to get used to, and it is, but Mesmer is definitely one of the hardest classes to play and can be really rewarding to pull it off. So this is an Aetherblade Fractal 96, and I'm at the last boss. I've actually soloed my way to here, which was pretty fun. I mean, soloing fractals is probably one of the most fun things for me in PvE. But you'll see the instabilities are Adrenaline Rush, which is whenever a mob gets to low HP, they're going to basically enrage and do 150% more damage. There's We Bleed Fire, which isn't too bad in solos. And then there is Outflanked, which means I'll take 300% more damage when hit from behind. So basically I don't want to show my back, and I want to play very carefully when I get a mob to low HP because I don't have the support of an entire group. Normally this fractal is kind of face roll with a entire 5-man group squad with support, but solo this can be very challenging, especially when the instabilities will basically one-shot me at any moment. So this is going to show the value that a Mesmer can bring, because not only do I have quite a bit of sustain on this build, but I have evasion. And if you don't get hit by the 300% extra damage, then it does 0 damage. So I am playing very safe at the start. I'm just kiting with my Greatsword and Split Surge to, so the mob right there, it just enraged, as you can see. So I'm going to play very safe and just try to finish them off before I try to play a little bit more aggressively. So that mob is down. And I know that the boss here has, so there's another enrage, so I'm playing super safe. So the boss has quite a bit of health for a solo player to take out, so I don't want to be zerging them and ignoring the mobs. I'm just trying to take out the mobs first. And one issue with this solo is whenever you do kill the mobs, more spawn, and then this like the Grenadier here, you just keep throwing like these AoEs on the floor. And if I get hit by them, it's taxing me quite a bit. So I have to use my evades and positioning here very well, and just keep kiting around and surviving while still doing damage. So I knocked that assassin away, and I'm just trying to kill the Grenadier because they're giving me the most pressure. And imagine they're hitting me and I'm not, they don't even have enrage or outflanked on those hits. So I'm taking quite a bit of pressure. So if I get hit by them from behind or right now while they're enraged, yeah, it's gonna hurt a lot. So I have to play, yeah, right there I almost died because they were enraged. So I got the kill on the Grenadier and I'm looking to kill this assistant now. The mobs actually do stop spawning after some time, so I am just trying to finish them off so I can focus on the boss. And alone the boss is actually pretty easy, so it's not too big of an issue once you get to that point. But then later on in the fight you'll see there's way more mechanics that you have to deal with that the Mesmer will be able to handle. So I'm just spamming Split Surge here and playing very safe. I'm not really going into the ideal rotation here at all, because in a realistic situation where you're taking a lot of pressure, you're using your Greatsword for range, you're using your dodges as a dodge, not as your damage. Yeah, and this mob right here, really dangerous there because it's still enraged. So I use my Greatsword 2 to finish them off. And now the boss is alone, so I can basically 1v1 this. I can break their bar because I have a lot of CC on this build. I use Diversion, but they apparently don't get hit by that. Another thing is your heal skill can be used aggressively because it'll recharge your phantasms. And right now I don't really have to worry about the sustain that I'm getting. So I just use my phantasm recharge there for my heal. And I break the bar and do my mind rack and all of my burst. So now I'm just playing very aggressively and repositioning, even though you know, I'm in Greatsword, so I can back off and not take unneeded pressure. And their break bar is back, so I'll probably wait for my ambushes to be finished, and then I'll probably go in for another break with the sword. So the boss needs to get down to like 75 or is it 70 HP. So I'm just taking my time right now. I've actually, so this fractal took me probably like an hour and a half to complete, because the mobs actually destroy you in this fractal with the outflank buff, right? Because if I'm trying to focus on one mob, then I get hit from behind from another. And the mobs are like level 83, so you hit glancing blows all the time, and they just have so many more statistical advantages over you. And it is fractal level 96, so it is definitely intended to be 5-manned. So yeah, it's pretty fun and interactive, to be honest, to do this fractal solo. But yeah, it is very difficult, and that's one of the reasons why I like it. It's something challenging, which you don't really get too much in PvE. So yeah, we're just trying to DPS the Frizz boss here, and he does this flamethrower attack, but as you can see, my clones are actually taking aggro from the boss, and that's helping me to free cast a little bit better. And what I'm actually doing is, because whenever I dodge, I'm creating a clone, so what I'll do is I'll create the clone from range, and then I'll move away from the clone so that when Frizz tries to attack one of my clones, he'll not be near me and hitting me with the attacks that he's hitting my clones with. So I get another Shatter Burst here, and yeah, we're just going to use the sword there. And yeah, so you have the survivability of evades, you have the survivability of all the sustain from generating clones, and then just clones in general, right, are a sort of like a ranger pet, right? They can take aggro for you. And the reason why I took the Signet of Midnight here instead of Illusionary Ambush is simply because later on in the fight, you'll have some issues with the mechanic. You don't want to be moving around to random places. So yeah, the first utility slot there can be kind of like whatever you need for the situation. And in this situation, I needed to not be Illusionary Ambush. So now we've phased the fight into the Golem phase, where you've got this like rotating thing. And if you get hit by the rotating beam like that, basically you'll take a ton of agony damage, and you could potentially die if it's in the wrong situation. You can recover from getting hit by it, but yeah, it's really bad. And with these golems having the ability to give me, you know, enrage damage or outflanking damage, because they do a lot of CC, it can be very dangerous. So I'm just trying to kite around. This first phase is very simple at first, and then it scales up and gets a lot more complicated later, where you'll see that I need to really make use of the Mesmer's mechanics. So I dodge there to avoid that pull attack, I believe, and the mob is now enraged. So I have to be careful with that. I avoid that We Bleed Fire. And now we're in phase 2. Whoa, okay, the mob is still 5% HP. I'm playing safely because when phase 2 hits, I want to have some cooldowns to not get destroyed there. So we finish him off. And now phase 2, the beam changes to a more vertical beam, so you can't use the boxes to avoid it, but it's slower, so I have to move simply to avoid it. But now there's also 2 golems, which can be dangerous because if one enrages or both enrage at the same time, then I'll have to deal with both, and you really want to finish off the enrage as fast as possible. So here I'm just trying to stay as close to the beam in front of me as possible rather than the beam behind me, because then it gives me more time to deal with the beam, and if I get pulled, then I don't get pulled into the beam. So my positioning here is really important. One of the mobs enrages, so I'll probably want to use my distortion, but we actually, yeah, we get the kill on it, so it doesn't matter, but I took quite a bit of damage there. I use my pistol phantasm, and they're gonna enrage, so I just diversion them and spam more dazes from my ambush there, and I knock the golem away, even though the golem's kind of like gaining vulnerability from passing through the beam there. So now we're in the final phase. Both beams are now active, and there's 2 golems, so I can't just run from the larger beam because the smaller beam is moving faster. So I have to do a combination of moving really quickly and using verticality and dealing with the golems who can knock me down like that, as you can see. So that's the first time I ate the beam there, and I took a lot of damage. So I am very pressured. I'm playing very safe and knocking the golem away. I'm going to line of sight, but the line of sight doesn't work there, and I get pulled, which I get very lucky that I don't get pulled through the beam there again. I use a little bit of the terrain to get over the beam, and I'm repositioning with my Mirage thrust there. I'm making sure that I have an eye on those golems, because if they pull me and I don't see the animation happening, then it could be the end of me. The pulls here aren't that bad, but I'm still taking a lot of damage from outflanked, and I land a very good pistol 5, which CCs them and allows me to get some good ambushes. And we're getting them kind of low, and I have to dodge this, but yeah, I get hit again. So I try to blink through the beam there, but it doesn't work. So I'm really pressured. And I have a distortion. I could have distorted through the beam as well, but I was saving my cooldown. And yeah, I get hit there, which is not very good. And I use my distortion to get through the beam there, so I can start DPSing the golems again. I have my Signet of Illusions. I should probably use that, so I have like a get out of jail free card. Yeah, we have to dodge that, but I get hit by the pole again. So yeah, I'm making actually quite a bit of mistakes. One of the golems has enraged, so this is kind of a very dangerous situation. I dodged the pole, which could have ended my life there. I need to get on top of this. I have to dodge the pole again, and yeah, that was an enraged mob. I jaunt through the beam because ports will not trigger the effect of the beam. And yeah, I just have to finish off this one golem because it's enraged, and then I can focus on the next golem. And at this point, it's pretty much a free win because we've only got one golem, so I can focus on just the one golem and get the kill on that very safely. So yeah, this is pretty much okay. It's enraged now, so it is dangerous, but I can distort through that beam there and get a daze on them and jaunt away, maybe get a little bit of a daze again. And yeah, we're gonna also have unblockable on the Greatsword too, which can actually get through these, yeah, the invulnerability they have, and I jaunt through again. So yeah, we get the kill on the Frizz boss of the Aetherblade Fractal, 96. For PvP, the main difference is that you only have one dodge, but you can make up for that by taking the Blurred Inscriptions trait instead of Illusionary Inspiration, which makes all of your signets give distortion and have increased effects. So your heal will give distortion and it'll heal for more. You'll generally want to be using your heal instead of just leaving it there for the passive. Signet of Midnight will now give Distortion, and it will also give you 5 Condition Cleanse, so that's really strong because it's kind of like your get out of jail free card. So if you ever get jumped by something and you have this ready, you can use it to react and even to counter pressure, because Distortion will also give you your Desert Distortion for ambushes. So having all of these signets give Distortion is going to give you a lot more mobility as well because of the Mirage Thrust. And then obviously Signet of Illusions will give you Distortion, and then it will summon a clone whenever you activate it. So in PvP, I take the Berserker Amulet and Lynx Rune because this is how you get your movement speed. You take double energy and exposure and absorption, which is pretty much similar to the PvE sigils as well. So how you want to play this build is mostly as a roamer. You want to be looking for kills, and you want to try to bait out your target's cooldowns with your pistol phantasm. It does quite a bit of power damage, and if you can interrupt people with either your magic bullet, your diversion, or your mirage thrust, you can get quite a bit of recharge on your phantasmal duelist from the recharge trait of duelist discipline. So this can allow you to do quite a bit of damage because the pistol phantasm, it shoots out this effect that hits over time. So if someone tries to dodge your attack, well, they're not going to dodge all of it with just one dodge. So it baits out cooldowns very well, and it pressures targets. You can also go for the blinding dissipation if you want. The Fencer's Finesse is kind of like PvE oriented, and blinding dissipation can give you quite a bit of utility. But to be honest, I was trying out Fencer's Finesse and it feels pretty okay too. So you can go for either one of these. And then once you've baited out their cooldowns, you can swap into your Greatsword. Generally, I like to use Phantasmal Berserker into my dodge, and then I'll use a Split Surge because you don't want to get interrupted on your Phantasmal Berserker, so I like dodging that. And then once you've got your clone from Deceptive Evasion, and you've got you're going to use your Mirror Blade, you'll do one more dodge into the ambush there, and that'll give a lot of vuln, and then you can use your F1 Mind Rack to shatter with all that might and vulnerability to do a lot of burst. You just want to set up the situation where you've got a lot of clones in your Greatsword, do your ambushes in huge team fight situations, and then when you're trying to pressure a single target and you don't have a lot of dodges left, go into your sword and then try to immobilize them with your sword 3, and you can precast your pistol phantasm into that, and then you want to just keep interrupting them, hitting them with the mirage thrusts, get your clones up again, do the power burst from your split surge, and then you can shatter. In PvP, you're going to be using your distortion a lot more liberally, and in a lot of cases you want a distortion early. So what I like to do is I'll distortion on a target, mostly when I'm in sword, because it just gives you so much sustain and it gives you so much counter pressure. And yeah, it's just really good to use distortion as like an aggressive tool, not only as a defensive one, because while you're invulnerable, you don't need to worry about any counter pressure, so you can just play as aggressively as possible. So yeah, that's pretty much how you want to play it. So this is a ranked PvP match as the Power Mirage, and I'll be playing the role of a roamer, trying to get kills, not worrying too much about getting caps. So immediately I see that their Guardian is heading towards our home node, and we want to probably gank that with our Renegade here because our other 1v1er at home is a Core Guardian. We don't really know how that's going to go. So we just want to snowball this, get the kill, and then we can snowball into mid. So I'm going to use my sword 3 to get at that ledge and chase, but we've kind of left our Scourge alone, and a Scourge is a lot easier to kill alone than a Core Guardian. I go for the res with my feedback bubble, but they have 2 Scourges cleaving that, so I'm going to have to back out. And one thing that's really good about Mesmer is you can always choose to leave unless they have as much mobility as you. So if you're the highest mobility class in the match, which this is a very tanky match right now, they've got a bunch of Scourges, Guardians, and Rangers. So if I've got the most mobility, then I can always choose when to leave, and they can't really force the kill on me. So this allows me also to rotate and to leave losing fights and get the momentum that allowed me to actually win this fight at far, because I got the kill on their ranger before their guardian could pressure my ranger. So we're gonna go back into mid, and they've got 2 scourges here trying to sit on the node, and that is very bunkery, so it's gonna be very difficult to get them off the node and to really just get any kills, because they can just revive each other. So we get the down with a really good split surge, but they're going to be rezzing, so I try to do a little bit more damage. I should probably go for a invuln stomp, but yeah, they get the res because scourge res is just insane. And they're giving out barrier now because they were in down state, so now they've got all their cooldowns, so it's going to be hard for me to get the kill secured here. I swap into sword and I use my pistol stuff, but their renegade is pressuring me. I'm using my distort to keep on the kill. They get transfused back onto the node, and I'm trying to pressure with my team with auto attacks. And yeah, we've got 4 here now, so we're gonna be able to get the kills here in this 4v3. And we've lost our ranger because of that, and we didn't even have far in the first place. So we're 3 capped, but we just got 3 kills. So we're in potentially a good situation because we can snowball out. I'm going to 2v1 their guardian at our home node, and our renegade decides to chase, so I decide to cap the node, whereas normally I wouldn't want to cap the node, but it's like it's 2 roamers, one of us has to cap. So I see that they've already kind of been aggressive enough to take the initiative to get the kill. So I have confidence in their ability to do that, so therefore I'll cap the node. But normally, yeah, I'd let a duelist or even a support cap a node first. So yeah, we've lost 2 of our players at far, so we're not in the best situation because they got regrouped on at far, so maybe we shouldn't have gone to far, but we're gonna try to get like some momentum at mid before their team comes into mid with their whole regroup. So they've killed us and we've killed them, and now the map is kind of like an even state. Even though we have mid, we want to kind of like take this even fight near mid. I use my pistol burst on this renegade. While they are stunned, I also immobilize them in the pistol phantasm to get a lot of pressure on them before they can react. And then from there, I just use distortion and dazes to really prevent them from counter pressuring me to get the kill very quickly with my ranger. So we've got more kills here. I noticed that their scourges have respawned and are back on mid, and we can't really compete with a double scourge team fight without double scourge. So yeah, we lose mid, and we've got sides, which is not bad. And I see that their guardian is heading for our home. So instead of going into mid and trying to fight double scourge with all of my team dead, I tried to zone their guardian off of our home node. Our renegade is on the kill with me, which is very good, and I just chase with as many ports as I can. They're doing a very good job of kiting with ports too, but I have, as I said before, more mobility than anyone else in this match, so I can pretty much secure kills because no one can really escape from me. If there were like a thief on the enemy team, I'd take a lot more pressure and I'd focus more on staying with my team rather than chasing kills, and the thief can like counter Mesmers in a way, but if I stay with my team, I actually give a lot more support to my team than a thief would. So I'd have to play around that in this way, but since the match favors their team fight a little bit more, I'm going to play more of a roamer than a team fighter. And this build does play very well in team fights because of split surge, because the more targets that you have to shoot beams at, the more chances that those projectiles pierce and multi-hit the same target. So I'm going to go into far. I don't really like the mid node in this match, and my ranger gets a really good immobilize on the scourge, but they have most of their barrier up, so I'm waiting to do most of my damage till after that. They are out of barrier now, so I land a really good split surge, but they dodge, and there's more barrier out there, but I distort so that I don't get immobilized by the ranger that joins this 2v2. And I'm pretty sure that their scourge is out of cooldowns by now, so I land a really good split surge. And now I have to help my ranger. So I go into stealth to get the stomp really quick, but my ranger goes down right after. I blink onto them and immediately res so that nothing funny happens, and the feedback is very useful for preventing the other ranger from preventing me from resing. So we've got the kills here. We don't really own any nodes though, so we're gonna have far and we're gonna try to get the kills at mid. We've actually died at mid. I think we were maybe outnumbering or something. So yeah, we're not in a good spot here. I think we're in like a 2v3 now, so we're outnumbered, but their Scourge is very low, and there's actually a fourth coming in, so I have to probably, yeah, I probably should be noticing that and getting out. My Renegade goes down, and I'm out of all my cooldowns, so I'm going to back off and probably use my Signet of Illusions just to be safe here, so that I have my Distortion, or maybe not, who knows. And actually, they've rotated out because they don't want to chase me. They know that I can disengage, so that the enemy team has mostly rotated well here to not overcommit to this fight. But the other Scourge is staying to prevent one of their Scourges from dying. And I can't really 1v2 two Scourges, so I decide to leave and go for the +1 on far. So this is a really power play because both their Scourges can't keep up with me, and that allows me to get to this fight, +1 that, and then they're stuck at mid trying to rotate into our home node. So the way you want to play around these kind of comps where you can't contest them in team fights is you do want to out rotate them, outmaneuver them, and I get a really good diversion there to interrupt the stomp and secure my feedback res. And now their Scourges are trying to play around me, and I'm splitting them up, which allows us to get the kill on their Renegade with my teammates focusing the Renegade and me splitting their Scourges from it. And now we can outnumber their Scourges, which is really the only way to get the kill there, is just sheer damage. So we are focusing this Scourge. They used most of their barrier there, so I'm going to back off for a bit maybe. I go invuln on the node. They have so much AoE on the node that I have to watch out for that. And my Guardian goes down. I try to go for the res. I distort to prevent that, and we actually get the res, which is good, but I feel as if we're not going to get the kill now because they've got all their barriers. Actually, no, we've got the Scourge pretty low, so I'm staying to get the kill here. But my Guardian is really low, so I'm going in for my Split Surge. I get the down, I distort so that I can, probably should have gone for a Distort Stomp, but yeah, they have the Transfuse, so I wouldn't get it. Maybe if I would have positioned the Stomp better, it could have been a good one. I noticed my Guardian's in the down state, but I have to cleave this because if I play for the res game, they're always going to win, right? So I wanted to secure it faster, but yeah, the res just out reses my cleave. And now I see that their ranger's coming in. I go for the res on my Guardian and realize that, yeah, this is a lost fight even before their ranger comes in. So I leave, but the Guardian doesn't have enough disengage, so they're probably going to die. But no, they're actually not dead yet. So I'm going to help to counter pressure and peel for them to get them out. And they eventually survive. So, okay, that's pretty good. And this Scourge is pretty low, but yeah, they're probably going to get supported by the other Scourge. I'm just trying to keep them here, but yeah, they realize that they're not getting too much value here. The Scourge uses most of their barrier, so I'm going to wait a little bit. I'm just getting clones up. As soon as the barrier goes down, I split Surge and use a lot of my damage and get the burst there really easily because Scourge has a lot of sustain, but burst is a very good way to counter it if you can play around the times when they have their barrier. So now that we've got the kill on one of their Scourges, we can go on their next Scourge and we can 3v1 their Scourge, and that'll allow us to get the kill very easily. So splitting them allowed us to basically kill them one at a time rather than trying to kill them both at the same time, and they support each other. So now the game is getting close to ending. We've lost home, but we've gained mid, and our ranger is in a very close 1v1 here. So we're going to make that a 2v2. We're going to focus their target, and my Renegade is here too as well. So we're in a good spot. I'm just trying to auto attack as many cooldowns as possible until I get my clones out. And I split Surge to finish this cleave off. My guy goes down, so I just go for a Distort Stomp. Try to make that as clean as possible. And yeah, we win the fight there, but we lose mid because of respawns, I believe, but we're getting home. So at this point, I'm pretty sure we've won the match. I'm just going to delay them at mid. If I really cared to try hard here, I would just stand on one of the nodes because that's a more secure kill, but I am looking to just put more pressure out and play the game. World versus World is really just going to use the same idea as PvP, but instead of having the weaker energy sigils from PvP, you're going to have the stronger ones from PvE. So every time you dodge, you're going to use your entire dodge bar, but then you can refill the entire dodge bar again by swapping weapons. And normally in PvP, this isn't really too big of a deal, but in World vs. World, you often cap out your energy bar by swapping, and then you don't want to waste the energy. But there is a technique where you can do a double ambush. So what you want to do is get in combat, obviously, and then you want to dodge, swap weapons, and then ambush. And then you have another dodge that you can use. So dodge, swap, ambush, and then I can dodge and then ambush. So basically what happens is you're using your dodge, but since there's 2-second window before you need to use your ambush, you can use the dodge on one weapon set and then swap to another one and then get your dodge back and then use the ambush, and then from there use the dodge again. And that's really good for the sword because you can get a lot more mobility if you do that technique. So I can double Mirage thrust and really get some distance for chasing or disengaging, and it's super important to be using that kind of technique always, because every time you swap weapon, you're going to get an entire dodge bar. So you either want to use one ambush and then swap and then use the next dodge and ambush, or you can use a double ambush. Here is a little bit of a 1v2 against another Mirage and a Reaper. So immediately the Mirage jumps on me, I land my Mirror Blade and I do a diversion to try to prevent them from bursting me. And I have full clones up now, so I'm going to use my distortion with full clones, and that's going to allow me to do tons of Mirage thrusts, which is going to help me to gain clones and to just counter pressure, to be honest. Now the Reaper spots me and is now attacking me. I dodge the Spinal Shivers there, and I get pulled, so I use Signet of Midnight. I land some massive split surges from afar because they're next to each other and it's piercing both of them, but the Reaper is rezzing very hard, so I get the diversion on them, knock them away, and I know that I have to cleave really hard here while surviving. I use my Sword 3 to juke the Reaper Shroud, and now I have my full distortion to use, which means I'm super safe, and I can just keep using my Mirage Thrust to keep dazing the Necro and preventing them from really attacking me a lot. So noticing how I use the sword a lot more than the Greatsword in this encounter, because the sword allows you to do damage while also avoiding damage a lot more than the Greatsword. The Greatsword is actually a very vulnerable weapon, so it's kind of how you deal with those outnumbered situations, is actually using sword. Here's a 1v1 with a Burst Fresh Air Weaver, and normally this is a very favorable matchup for me, but it's still very dangerous because they have a lot of barrier, and I'm going to have to play carefully to survive long enough until their barrier runs out. So as you can see here, I'm using the sword once again in the situations where I can't really damage them and to pressure and to bait out cooldowns. Rather than wasting my burst into their barrier, I set up my burst, and then as soon as their barrier runs out, I used all my damage into their actual health bar. So here is a situation where two very dehydrated players are going to try to kill me. I have to immediately use my Signet of Midnight because I'm getting stunned and I don't want to get bursted down. So I use my heal skill and I'm just kiting out, trying to create a situation where I can get one of the players alone. So I'm using my mobility to, because if one of them is able to chase harder than the other and I can move faster than both, then whichever one chases me faster will be split from the other one who's lagging behind. So that kind of allows me to simulate a 1v1 for a very short amount of time and have more potential to get it down. And once one of them goes down, I have a lot of potential to secure that down with my sword And yeah, so I'm just kiting here and making sure that I can see what cooldowns and the amount of health that they have. The hollow mounts up, and I also mount up, so I'm going to demount them and just try to bait them a little bit further, see if they'll keep chasing. The Mirage is quite further ahead of the hollow right now, so this is a very good situation. I do get really hard CC'd there. I think they're using Mantra or something, but yeah, this is very dangerous. I am right next to my keep, so we can use that as bait as well. And I use a really good Mirage thrust, which interrupts the other Mirage. And I actually get the Mirage down here with my Mirage thrust. And this is perfect because now the Engineer is forced to res, and I have plenty of cleave because I can just go into my Greatsword to use the Split Surge, or I can just stay in my sword here, and as you can see, I'm just spamming the Mirage thrust, and I'm cleaving while also dazing, so they can't really res through the daze, and basically the guards are just free casting during that time, and it allows me to get the kills very easily. So that's kind of how you use your mobility to separate and get kills on enemies who you feel like you can't really kill them together. So yes, that is the Power Mirage, and if you like this kind of video, give it a like and subscribe for more. And this is the final video of the series, so if you want to see other builds that work in all game modes, check out the playlist in the link in the description. And if you would like to, you can support me by becoming a patron or just sharing my videos. And that is all, so I will see you guys next time.